Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We are going to get started right at the top of the hour here for a very packed agenda as we continue to welcome participants and speakers onto the line. Thank you all so much for joining us and welcome to our event today called Towards a New Path for Development: Lessons Learned, Emerging Best Practices, and Concrete Actions for Gender Equality and a Just Transition. My name is Kate Oren. I'm Senior Advisor in UNDP's Global Gender Equality Team, and I'm so glad that you're all here with us today. This event, co-organized by UNDP with OECD and ILO, in part to help promote our two new publications. This event aims to share new regional data and exchange knowledge from across regions. In particular, we're going to hear some concrete experiences from countries who are already showing promising practices across Europe, Central Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean region. We're also going to hear how the Just Transition Work Program being discussed there in Berlin at COP30 can help shape and usher a gender just transition at every level. Now, if you're joining us directly from the official COP30 Malacca Virtual Pavilion, welcome to you. Hope you're enjoying the virtual space and designing your avatar. If you're listening in from Zoom, please feel welcome to share your comments in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. You can also click on the little More button with 3 dots to access the AI translator who will help summarize in your preferred language. And a last housekeeping matter, please be aware that this session is going to be recorded and shared afterwards. We'll also be sharing bios and links to the publications in the chat so you can access them there. Our agenda is organized in several parts today, and we have a lot of brilliant speakers who have all promised me they're going to stick very close to time, as our schedule today is very full and action-packed. So to begin officially, I'm really delighted to pass the microphone to UNDP's Raquel Lagunas, the head of gender equality, to share some words of welcome. Over to you, Raquel, and thank you.
Thank you so much to you, Kate, and colleagues, friends in Belém, and those joining us from around the world, colleagues from OECD and ILO, and of course, dear colleagues from UNDP. Very, very warm welcome to you to this event. Today, we really face the question that is crucial in the context of the COP30. It's not new, but is very relevant. And the question is, who will have a voice and who will benefit from the green transition? Who will benefit from the idea and the vision of a more resilient world? This discussion we have heard many times, how the transition to the green economies will shape our societies completely and our economies over the next 50 years. But will women benefit from it? Can we transform the economies, the paradigms? Will this shift help women to have higher paid jobs, more stable and fulfilling decent jobs? Will this help them to gain control over their lives, to decide together the future of their countries and their societies? We at UNDP think that just transition is not just about new technologies or public policies, it's our real lives, and it's about the power game. For millions of women, there are barriers like unpaid care work, like workforce restrictions that stand in the way of these opportunities. So if we don't tackle the deep structures of inequalities, we will not succeed. And this promise of the green future will really left out, not behind, out, many people, many women. For example, just to give you a couple of numbers, in Europe and Central Asia, our recent study found that 60% of women in brown sectors risk missing out on green jobs. Why? Because of the skill gap and the wage losses that are almost twice at the risk faced by men. Another example coming from our colleagues from Latin America and the researchers that we have been doing, 80% of the new green jobs from decarbonization are expected in male-dominated sectors, meaning by that that male will be the ones likely to get greater employment gains than women, unless we correct the direction of this action. Without forward-thinking strategies, this green transition can definitely worsen the inequalities, and we cannot risk the future. There are plenty of good ideas and solutions that have been implemented and tested in countries. For instance, addressing the gender bias and the difficulties that women face accessing to green financing. Can we, for instance, redirect fossil fuel subsidies towards care system, expanding care system, child tax credits? Why not? Can we support land rights and women cooperatives through sustainable agriculture investments? Another proposal, can we invest in social protection systems that facilitate livelihood transition in the sectors affected? So many interesting topics to discuss. I will not take more time. I will just reaffirm UNDP's commitment to support countries in this path. We have great examples of working together, like in Bosnia-Herzegovina, defining a full blueprint for gender-responsive just transition for all, identifying the gender risk of the transition, defining what is a gender-responsive transition, even addressing the issue of budget, as well as the STEM for All platform in Europe, Asia, and Pacific countries that are bringing young women and offering the capacity development to get towards the skills that they need to join the green sector. So I will stop here. Thank you so much. We really believe that the Just Transition Work Program is fundamental to make this new standard and support countries to put gender equality at the center. And thank you. Let's get ready to learn a lot from our speakers during our today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raquel, for setting the tone. Perfect words to kick us off today. Now, please join me in welcoming Ms. Veronica Arpinton, Advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister on Economic Development and Digitalization in Moldova, for some opening remarks. Veronica, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a great pleasure for me. Thank you so much, and good morning, esteemed guests, distinguished speakers, partners, and colleagues, everyone who is interested in this topic. The topic becomes really hot, not just because it's a matter of just transition. It's a matter of our future, where we want everyone, men and women, to contribute to the economic prosperity of the society. And as Raquel said, it's also about the future of jobs, about the future of incomes, and representation of everyone in the professions and jobs which are generating the progress, innovation, and also increase the income sources, also combined with the contribution to the development of the society. For Moldova, it is indeed a very important part of our plan, because we are in the transition to the EU now, and we make a big effort to be even more active in this field. It's also important for everyone, I think, and I wish you to learn from our speakers their experiences and the lessons learned already, so as we can adopt our policies in our countries and adopt the success stories which have been already proving their efficiency in your countries. So thank you for everyone. I also would like to thank UNDP colleagues for the extremely important job they are doing with the study, which will be presented later on with by Cornelio. And I'm specifically eager to know about the success stories, but also good pathways for Moldova in our case, and for your countries as well, to use the insights from this UNDP study and implement the recommendations and learn from lesson learned. To all the participants, I encourage you to be active. I am ready to make note as well. Ask difficult questions. This is uncomfortable, but it's very challenging and important experience. And your voice is essential in shaping our conversation and in shaping our future. Thank you so much, and have a nice session.
Veronica, thank you so much. I really like that sentiment, that there's nothing quite easy about this, actually, right? But here we are together figuring it out, and thank you so much for being here and helping to kick us off. Now, I am really delighted to invite you to join me in welcoming Ms. Maud de Vautibeau, Associate Director for the Impact and Human Capital Investing for Infrastructure and Energy at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Maud, it's a pleasure to welcome you this morning, and thanks to you for some opening remarks as well. Maud, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me, dear participants, and inviting me to participate to this COP event co-organized by the UNDP, ILO, and the OECD. And welcome to everyone. Yes, as was mentioned before, gender equality and just transition are intrinsically linked and complementary. The just transition objectives, as you know, aims to ensure that the benefit of the green economy transition are shared while protecting vulnerable countries, peoples, and regions. The EBRD recognizes gender equality as a key driver for sustainable transition and inclusion growth across its region of operation and believes that equality of economic opportunity for women and men are key elements of a modern, well-functioning market economy and essential to sustainable growth. So why just transition is important? First of all, from a social fairness perspective, new green energy projects usually won't build in the same place as old coal mines and power plants. Sometimes they can be reused, but it's not easy. And we can't just move workers straight into green jobs. Some skills fit, but not all the skills. It's not a one-to-one transition. It's not possible. So when old energy sites close, many workers, communities, and regions end up being left behind. Policy needs to help workers retain when possible or support them to retire if they are near to the end of their career. We also need to make sure younger generation get the right skills so they can benefit from new green jobs and new job opportunity, whether it's green sector or other. For example, currently, EBRD is deploying a very large program in North Macedonia funded by the Climate Investment Fund. So the main objective is to retain more than 2,000 workers for the main energy utility workers and add 2,000 more from the coal value chain. So in total, 4,000 beneficiaries will be reskills with reskills training assessment led by the EBRD. And from a decision-making perspective, why the just transition is important, it's to ensure the female voice are represented and have decision-making power in designing and owning the processes of delivering a just transition. Women can and will play a critical role in responding to climate change due to their local knowledge and leadership and in sustainable resource management and sustainable practices at community level. And last thing is from a future green skills perspective. Training program for women and girls in STEM, renewable energy, and transportation may be paired with removal of structural barriers, including access to childcare, workplace safety, and wage equality to ensure genuine and lasting inclusion of these women to participate to this new green job. We know that STEM field, renewable energy and engineering remain male-dominated right now, but without a proactive policy, women risk being left out of the emerging green sector that will shape future economy power. Another very quick example is the Walcott platform that will be supporting women to adopt leadership position, build community network, as well as building capacity to participate within the transition and benefit economically from the shift to sustainable. And that's also, we have a couple of examples. I know that Central Asia is part of this organization and of this region that will be highlighted during the webinar. But we do have also a lot of skills program in green and renewable energy sectors in Central Asia and in Uzbekistan in particular. So ultimately, I would say that the green transition is very important for all and to ensure that women and all the local community are included, especially in the forward-looking manner to look at the future green jobs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maud. I think you have anchored our discussion so beautifully here, not only in the why this is so important to anchor gender equality in our just transition pathways, but you've already teased the next segment of this discussion, which is about moving into more regional and then national examples. So I really thank you so much. And, you know, as we've now heard already, many countries are also starting to walk this path. Across regions, countries in very different contexts have started to uncover how this necessary transition can really put gender equality at the center of discussions, of partnerships, cross-sectoral planning, etc. Through our work with many different countries, we've seen, and we've already heard a bit in this opening, that in order to ensure that diverse women can participate and benefit from a just transition, we need critical building blocks. These include proper data collection and analysis, strengthened policies and institutions, opportunities for skilling diverse women, diverse groups, and targeted investment opportunities for women-led initiatives. We can share this slide. I'm not going to go into all of the text on the screen at the moment, but the reports that we're really pleased to help present and share today really contribute to building this evidence base, this knowledge base, and share unique experiences and recommendations from across different regions. So now I'm really delighted to invite two dear colleagues to join me on the screen to share more about these respective regional studies. First, I'm going to go to my dear colleague Cornelio Eftedi, UNDP's Regional Gender Advisor and Team Lead from Europe and Central Asia, to give us some of the key points from the new UNDP OECD regional study. How can Europe and Central Asia achieve gender equality through a green transition? Cornelio, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you, Raquel, Veronica, and Maud for your, very inspiring opening remarks. I think we are at a very exciting moment now. Critical as we hear that, we are yet to see a lot of inequalities in the just transition process, but also exciting because we see that gender equality is becoming central part of the just transition, and that is clearly identified through many of the platforms, including the COP platform. UNDP regional office in Europe and Central Asia has developed its own just transition navigator, a guidance on what does it mean to work in the just transition area, because it requires policy-driven, very context-specific decisions and actions. And one of the key elements it says is that gender equality should be central to just transition, because it needs to be people-oriented, people's-focused, not only decarbonization process per se. And so together with OECD, we've embarked on this journey to really understand how can Europe and Central Asia achieve gender equality through green transition. So we went into analyzing labor force data from the government, and we also did qualitative data collection through interviews, focus group discussions, and surveys. About 2,000 people, I think, participated in the survey. Very interesting data, basically, that shows that inequalities are already visibly replicated or worsened, if nothing is to be done collectively from those who work in the just transition area. Only 2 or 3 slides I'm going to show, just to give you a little bit of a flavor from the study, and then encourage you to read the full study. We thought, okay, who gets the green jobs currently? So the current shape of the green jobs in Europe and Central Asia is actually only 3% of the total amount of the jobs in the region. Can you imagine? So we're talking about a very small, but progressively very opening opportunities area of work where green jobs could become, close to 100 maybe one day. And then say, okay, that's great, 3%. Where are women in these green jobs? And here the sad part comes in, right? Only one of these 3%, or 30, or 1/3 of these jobs are being actually held by women across the region, right? So there is there is obviously slightly more percentages and less percentages in each country, but it doesn't go more than 1.something%, which is Serbia, by the way, in our region, which showed, a slight outlier in a way, or a leader in a way, I would say. Otherwise, we have twice more men in the current green jobs than women. It's not on the slide, but I'm just going to say that it's very interesting that the green jobs are mostly concentrated in either the capital cities of the countries or the big industrial cities. And as you go to the rural areas, you see basically 0 green jobs for women. While green jobs for men are still there, less, but still there, there is almost 0 green jobs for women in those areas. So I think that all is kind of hinting to the social norms and all the discrepancies that are already happening on the labor market. All right, then we also looked at the education level, and we also seen that while for men in the green jobs, the spread of the green job, the spread of the education is kind of equal. So there is equal men in green jobs with high education, equal men in green jobs with vocational education. For women, it's mostly those with higher education. So that's also another important aspect that the policymakers need to know. Then we look into the future and say, okay, can we look into the transferability of the current skills of those who are in the brown jobs right now to the green jobs, and how easy that would be? And of course, here OECD came in very, very helpfully with their methodology, looking at basically a percentage of the skills that could actually be used also for the next green jobs. And we have detailed data information on that in the study. And we've seen that for men, 30% on average in the region of current men in the brown jobs, there will be a difficulty to transfer to the green jobs. For women, that percentage goes up to almost 70% if we speak about, for example, Kyrgyzstan. So you see, not only women have only 1/3 of the green jobs right now, they are also having twice more difficulties to transfer from the current brown jobs to the green jobs. So that tells us basically that if no action is being taken, not only there won't be any change in or any advancement in closing the gender gap, but it will be actually a worsening situation for that. So I'm happy to see that the Just Transition program that is shaping up, and I know some people on this call are already listening into the negotiations in the COP30. Actually, this is taking a central part of the discussions, because we can talk about just transition and the jobs and all the other aspects of it, but by the end of the day, we need to see, how is this going to affect the whole population of the world, inclusive women, who are half of them, approximately. If we can move to the next slide, I just wanted to say that we also looked into the qualitative aspect of it, and we've translated all the results in the STEM pipeline structure. Why STEM pipeline? Because it kind of replicates a women's life journey from the early system exposure in the school, in the education system, to the retention and advancement in the leadership. So if you look at this STEM pipeline, it kind of goes across the life journey of a woman. And of course, there are issues and barriers along this pipeline. That's why we call it a leaky pipeline, because at schools, women and girls, they both have the same access to the education. But then gradually, as you move to the employment, then they drop out because of the lack of mentorship, because of the men-dominated exclusive environment, not being encouraged to take STEM education careers or even curricular, biases in hiring practices, and you get to the care responsibility. So all of this hints to an intersectorial, coordinated, comprehensive policy approach that needs to be undertaken in the just transition area. If we can move to the next slide, we also had the one before. Thank you. Kind of the recommendations from what came out from the key stakeholders in the interview process. What do we need to do in all of those stages? In the early system exposure, in the accessing to skills, which could be an ongoing process, right? As we now say, lifelong learning, in the entry into the workforce, and then in the retention and advancement in STEM and leadership. And you can see on this slide a couple of them, including curricular, but also upskilling and reskilling of women currently in the workforce. A lot of work around the care economy, because a lot of women are actually dropping because of the care responsibilities, even with green skills that they may hold on. But also really looking at the flexible programs and digital literacy and e-commerce. One thing that I wanted to say also in the end, that the study identified many things, but there's two important things linked to the private sector company, and I'm so happy that we have private sector representatives on this call, on this panel to speak, is that the current educational system in many countries, if not in all, does not really create the skills that the private sector and the industries actually require for the green jobs. And that's a very interesting mismatch that has been identified as a key one in our region. And so many private sector companies, industries are creating their own training centers. So I think it hints us to the fact that the private-public partnership is really important and needed and required in this area. And at the same time, with all of these inequalities that I was presenting so far on these slides, it's also very interesting that some of the industry representatives, they do acknowledge that they don't have the right workforce for the green jobs, so it's not there. At the same time, many of them don't see gender equality as the barrier for that, while the official statistics and the data given by the governments actually shows that. So I think there is a lot of also unpacking this with the industry per se, and I think we need to work more with industries. And finally, just to say, so happy that out of this study, the Women's Powering Just Transition Network in the region has emerged, and I'm really excited about that. I'll stop here, Kate. I know we need to be short on time.
Thank you so much. You've gone a little bit over time, but that's okay because this study is so interesting. And Ayak, if you haven't already, please do make sure we put the link to this exceptional regional study with new data, a lot of concrete information and recommendations into the chat, please. Big kudos to everyone. And yes, we will be hearing more about that network at the end of this discussion. So please stay on the line. But without further ado, and thank you for being patient, my dear Guille, let me turn to my other wonderful colleague, Guillermina Martin, who's the Regional Gender Advisor and Team Lead for Latin America and Caribbean for UNDP. So Arbeck is not the only trailblazing region, is it? I would love to hear a little bit from you, Guille, about some of the takeaways we should have in mind from your recently published brief. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. You know, this is important for us. The Latin America and the Caribbean is the most vulnerable region for the climate change, where in recent temperature, extreme weather, and ecosystem stress. Yet this is depend poverty and magnified gender inequality. For us, it's very important, this document. We need comprehensive exacerbate poverty and gender inequality, especially the rural, indigenous, Afro-descended women in this region. These women bear the disproportionate burden and the unpaid care work, limiting their autonomy and the access to opportunity. The transition to low carbon economies could generate after this region the 15 million net jobs by 2030. However, with inclusive policy, most of these jobs will benefit only men, perpetuating gender segregation and in emerging green sector. In the line with the ILO guidelines for us and the drawing and extensive experience in the UNDP and ILO in this region in supporting governments in implementing policy, programs, NDC, MBSAP, Climate Promise, and the different energy sector, we are pleased to launch document that we are truly excited about this document. And it outlines its 9 key policy areas designed to ensure the just transition in also an equitable one. This area must be addressed in integrated and in coordinated manner across sector. The for just transition, equal transition, we propose from the 9 policy areas to be this cross-cutting way. The first is important macroeconomic and growth policy. We need include gender responsive budgeting, for example, economics, the UNDP moment for is very important, but we need work fiscal incentive, a public-private partnership that close gender gaps, and this moment is essential. The second is industrial and sectoral policies. Transform key sector with the gender diagnosis and the target women inclusion, emerging green, blue jobs, very important for us with extensive experience. The third, integrate enterprise-related policy, enable women access to finance, technology, and market, green, blue, and digital economy. For example, preferential credit lines, gender equality seal for us, but many stuff that the banks include this perspective. The third, similar with the Cornelius say, skill development training, train women in the STEM, renewable energy sector, reduce occupational segregation. Obviously, the climate crisis, we need reconsider occupational safety and health, embed gender in the new workplace risks, and ensure safe working conditions across feminicide sector, agriculture sector, and the male-dominated sector. For this is important for ILO, but the all agencies, the United Systems. Obviously, it's important the social protection and the care system is the key. The social protection spend coverage, especially for women, rural and informal sector, design social protection adapted to climate change as subsidy the foster comprehensive care system, invest in the care system. 7 is active labor market policy, incentive hiring, women in transition, support women's entrepreneurship, and the ensure care services to enable full participation. Labor, human rights, eradicate discrimination, promote equal, and they protect against violence and harassment. Obviously, ratify all ILO convention is important for all countries, and obviously this is not possible since social dialogue. Reduce polarizing moment. We need more social dialogue, tripartism, guarantee women representation in decision-making arenas, strengthen this platform, the dialogues, include women's organization in this key discussion. In conclusion, for just transition and truly include gender perspective, it's important for us. The care is key enabler. Investing in comprehensive care system is essential to transform economies, reduce women's unpaid economic, domestic, and care work, facilitate them into green jobs, and effectively promote care society. It's about advocate both a Buenos Aires commitment and Tlatelolco commitment signed by all countries, Latin America and Caribbean. The care society is the new proposal is important for all regions. Sector target for women, set concrete objective to recruitment, retention, and promotion of women strategic sector. Protecting resilient social protection, governments and meaningful participation. It obviously is political will and currents. Align climate, employment, and gender policy with clear budget, accountability, and evidence-based monitoring. Well, just transition depends on putting gender equality in the core of climate, economic, social policy through coordination action, investment in care, women full participation, and political will. At UNDP, gender equality is a strategic imperative of climate ambition, resilience. At the COP30, we have pivotal moment, negotiation, the new gender action plan under Lima work program and underway with over 90 countries calling for all ambition, action-oriented plan, drive gender just transition, unlock green jobs and green economy. Thank you so much. This is a moment. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And you both get a big gold medal for packing so much information into these short presentations. Colleagues on the line, please engage with these studies. They are so powerful. They present such actionable frameworks for key recommendations from policy to sectoral to action level, changing our workforces to power a green transition. Thank you, colleagues. So I'm going to switch gears now and move into the next segment of our discussion, which is really zeroing in on specific country experiences that can inform all of us. What do national actions for a gender just transition really look like? So first, I am so happy to introduce and welcome Ms. Didi Schaaf, Gender Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion Technical Officer at our partner ILO. Didi, from your experience in Latin America, I'm going to invite you to open your camera and turn on your mic. Tell us, is a green transition a fertile ecosystem for gender equality and women's empowerment? Just a small question with 3 minutes to answer. Thank you, Didi.
Thank you so much, Kate, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody participating in the event. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. And like Kate said, it's a small question, but quite complicated, I would say. But my answer to this question would be yes. I think the green transition can be a fertile ecosystem for gender equality and women's empowerment, but only if we cultivate it deliberately. And I think we heard that also already from the previous speakers. Without a gender-responsive approach, the transition risks reproducing or even deepening existing inequalities. So we all know that women and men are affected differently by climate change because of women's historical disadvantaged position in societies and economies. Like, for example, women, especially those in the informal economy or in rural areas, are often among the first to experience climate shocks. And the last to benefit from new opportunities, technologies, and knowledge. And at the same time, the green economy holds an enormous potential. The ILO estimates that up to 25 million new jobs could be created. Of course, other jobs will be also reduced or abandoned. But to reduce current gender inequalities, women should be part of these new opportunities. However, women are very much underrepresented in sectors related to science and technology, green jobs, and in decision-making, as we have also seen in Cornelio's presentation. To make the green transition truly just, because we talk about a just transition, there are a couple of things that are important. So gender equality needs to be embedded across all its pillars. And I just want to highlight 5 points that other people already also touched upon a little bit. So essential is the first one, skills and education. Women need equitable access to reskilling and lifelong learning. Also, this was highlighted by Cornelio in the STEM pipeline. We should look into all these barriers and make sure there's alignment with women's schedules for care needs and their other needs. And it should be aligned and not the other way around, because then we would lose out women. The second one would be decent jobs, social protection, and care jobs. So policies on a green transition must address decent work for all. The care economy, which is paid and unpaid care work, referring to domestic work, child care, elderly care, healthcare, and education, is often overlooked. And I'm glad everybody so far has mentioned it, but it's often overlooked in climate strategies. And this is not only a low carbon emissions sector, but it can also create millions of green and decent jobs, and also addressing one of the main barriers for women to fully work at their potential in the labor market. And it also will move us more towards a more caring and social economy. Then a third one, a social dialogue and leadership is crucial. Women must be at the decision-making tables in shaping climate policies, just transition frameworks, and also finance mechanisms. Then another one that I feel is another element that's very important is data and finance. So gender disaggregated data is a priority, also on intersecting elements such as indigenous identity. And access to finance opportunities for women-led enterprises and initiatives should be prioritized. Then I would also like to promote one of our publications. It's an ILO policy guide on gender equality and inclusion for a just transition. It's more broad than what was just explained in the partnership between ILO and UNDP. But it provides practical entry points to make climate and labor policies gender responsive, and is available in many languages. So I will ask your colleagues to post the link soon. So to conclude, I would like to say that a just transition is about green jobs, is about less carbon emission, but also about people. It's about fairness and about equal opportunities, and it can be a fertile ground for gender equality, But we would all need to nurture this by taking deliberate action. It doesn't come automatically. Thank you very much.
Exactly. It doesn't come automatically. It takes dedicated attention and dialogue like this one. So thank you so much, Didi. I've been thinking as you're talking about the relevance and importance of the more than 100 decisions that parties have taken under the UNFCCC process to anchor gender responsive action in our climate planning. And NDCs, of course, is one of the most important ways that countries think about and plan and invest in that implementation. So with that maybe semi-clumsy segue, I'm really delighted to turn the mic over to my dear colleague from UNDP from Kyrgyz Republic, Baktigul Yespyakyova. I'm sorry, I know I didn't get that quite right, who's the NDC project coordinator. I want to turn to you now to share, are there some examples from Kyrgyzstan, specific examples of actions and lesson learned to ensure energy, agriculture, mobility, and infrastructure transitions both involve and benefit directly women through the NDC process? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Good day, dear colleagues, partners, and friends. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and talk about very important topic, gender just transition. So when we talk about just transition in our country, in Kyrgyzstan, we are not talking about decarbonization. We are talking about people, about fairness, dignity, and new opportunities for women and girls. As we move forward to a low carbon and climate resilience future. Building on our national progress, Kyrgyzstan has developed its next generation NDC 3.0, which was submitted to UNFCCC, and the concept of carbon neutrality by 2050 and then up. With support from UNDP Kyrgyzstan, these frameworks provide clear directions for both mitigation and adaptation. But more importantly, they place people at the heart of climate action. For us, just transition means ensuring that the shift to a low carbon economy protects livelihoods, promotes social inclusion, and leaves no one behind. Kyrgyzstan has taken concrete steps to turn this principle into practice. NDC 3.0 integrates gender just transition principles, which each mitigation adaptation sector from energy and transport to agriculture to water was reviewed through a gender and social inclusion lens. A national vulnerability assessment identifies who is most at risk and who stands to benefit, which based on 7 criteria: income, employment, health, gender and social discrimination, living infrastructure, disability, age, and sex, enabling objective identification of priority groups. That's how women, youth, and vulnerability communities became visible in our climate policy. This process revealed how climate change and energy transition affect women and vulnerable groups differently. For instance, women in a rural area in our country spend up to 30% of household income on energy and are overrepresented in unpaid care work during energy shortage. Key measures in NDC 3.0 include gender-responsive budgeting, increasing participation of women and youth and in renewable energy projects, and gender-disaggregated indicators in climate monitoring. We then went to a step further. Kyrgyzstan conducted the first ever just transition readiness assessment in Central Asia. We asked the hard question: who gains, who loses? The findings shape our just transition roadmap to 2035, including a national retraining program for workers in carbon incentive sectors, a green professions initiative for youth, and financial access for women-led renewable energy businesses. But our approach is not limited to gender. It's about gender equality, disability, and social inclusion. We now have targeted measures like interest-free social credit for women and low-income households, community-based renewable energy cooperatives led by women, and inclusive awareness campaign reaching marginalized groups in rural areas. And critically, women's participation is not symbolic. Women's organizations, gender focal points in every governmental bodies, experts and activists have been involved at every single stage of NDC 3.0 preparation, from methodology design to verification. Because we see women at not as beneficiaries, but as leaders and agents of change and key drivers of a just transition. So let me end with a story from Fergana Valley, which is the most vulnerable area in our country and in the region in Central Asia, where women are leading resilience, adaptation, and peace-building efforts. In communities once divided by water scarcity, women now manage shared irrigation system, preventing conflicts and improving food security. This is what gender just transition looks like: peaceful, practical, and powerful. So how we can ensure NDC, NAPS, and LTS deliver a just transition, gender just transition, by grounding them in real lives and local voices, by designing policies with inclusion from day one, and by recognizing that just transition will only succeed when it uplifts the very people it is meant to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. That was such a beautiful intervention. Thank you so much for bringing us back to real people, to real women and all their diversity, not just as beneficiaries of all of our good planning and decarbonization, et cetera, but to lead as agents of change, as influential partners. Thank you so much. Speaking of influential partners and leaders, let me turn to our next speaker, Ms. Aleyda Erkup, International Relations and Project Expert at TISC, the Turkish Confederation of Employer Associations. Aleyda, given your experience, what transformations are needed related to STEM education for women to ensure that women in Turkey can be involved as leaders in the new green workforce? We're running a little short of time, but please, over to you, 3 minutes.
Thank you. Since this panel offers a great platform to share best practices, when answering your question, I would like to focus on women empowerment models in manufacturing industry. And this project builds practical and scalable models to create more STEM-based opportunities for women in manufacturing while helping companies advance in their digital and green transformation. So several key challenges triggered this project, actually. We all know that after the pandemic, many manufacturers faced new realities, disrupted supply chains, fast automation, especially young STEM graduates were still left out. And across our region, green jobs, only 1 in 3 of these jobs is held by a woman. In Turkey, it is even lower. In many industrial areas, women make up less than 10% of the manufacturing workforce. We saw that these challenges were deeply connected, and companies needed skilled workers and women had the talent. So we asked how we can make STEM training lead to real opportunities for women in the green economy. And that became the foundation of our project. We selected 200 STEM graduate women as change agents and 200 women as operators, and designed a comprehensive training journey for them. And this wasn't just classroom learning. For 100 manufacturing companies, first we carry out digital and green maturity assessments, and these show us the real skill gaps and priorities. And then we designed a training for women around those findings. With Next, it is the world's largest digital and green transformation center in Istanbul. Both groups receive about 300 hours of practical, industry-aligned training in automation, AI, and sustainability. And the key point is that this training responds directly to what companies need. After the training, these women join companies to put their new skills into practice. They are helping modernize production and support green and digital transformation. But we also know that technical training alone isn't enough. That's why we added a strong mentorship program. Because again, across our region, care responsibilities, weak networks, and social norms push women out of STEM at different stages. So mentorship helps close those gaps. In our project, around 100 mentors build confidence and find solidarity with peers. For many participants, it was the first time they have a female role model in a technical role. I have to say that the impact has been visible. Companies report faster adaptation and a real cultural shift. I mean, more openness, better communication, and stronger awareness of gender equality. So when we talk about transforming STEM education for women, our lesson is clear. It must be connected to real opportunities, supported by mentorship, and embedded in industry transformation. Our journey, and thank you for your question and letting me share our experience.
Alaida, that is just wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It's really beautiful to hear you. We so appreciate the work that you're doing. And thanks for also reinforcing this drumbeat of women as agents of change and the layers of transformation that are required. So finally, it's really my honor to welcome Ms. Fernanda Souza, who I hope is online. Okay, good. National Director of Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment in Uruguay. Fernanda, we're so lucky to have you. Thank you for joining us. Given your experience supporting national climate agendas, and we've heard a little bit on this already, so I'm hoping you dive in deeper. How can we ensure that national climate agendas work together for gender equality, that NDCs, NAPs, and the long-term low-emission development strategies contribute together to a gender-just transition? I know, another easy question for just 3 minutes. Fernanda, are you on the line? Did we lose Fernanda? I think we may have lost Fernanda. I know she was having a little bit of a technical issue. So maybe I will move to our next segment and invite Fernanda to come back if she comes back on the line. I'm just checking to see if I've missed her. All right. Do we have Sinead back from the negotiations? Oh, good. Hi, Sinead. Okay, great. Just in time. So we're going to move. I'll come back to Fernanda if we get her connected again. I really hope to hear her experience from Uruguay. But now we're going to shift to Belém. And we are so lucky to have one of the representatives from the Women and Gender constituency there on the ground who's working on the Just Transition Work Program. So Sinead, Ms. Sinead Magner, is the coordinator of policy and programs at the Women's Environment and Development Organization WeDo. Sinead, can you tell us what's going on in Belém? What is expected from the Just Transition Work Program negotiations happening these weeks? And what are the positions of the constituency? What are you hoping for? Over to you.
I can, and I could do it in 2 minutes. So in Belém, it's hot, it's sweaty, the ventilation is so loud, everybody, it looks like they're being stewed in a big soup. So perfect environment for negotiations you can imagine. In the Just Transition Work Program negotiations, which I've just dipped out of, they are feeling like a very, very promising and fruitful space, which can be very refreshing in this process. So two of the main things that are notable, that are happening at the minute, are that we have this draft text that came from SB 62 that's really, really well crafted. And we have one paragraph on finding right now the modalities of this work program are dialogues, okay? So 2 dialogues a year. It hasn't been so clear up until early this year exactly how they would how that would be operationalized or implemented, or what we would do with those dialogues. Now we're seeing a paragraph where those dialogues are reflected almost as principles for just transition at national level. And we have some really juicy, really, really good stuff in there. For the first time ever in the UNFCCC text of this passing of decision, we have mention of care work and informal work. And we have the importance of taking a gender responsive approach. We have labor rights in there. We have human rights in there. And we also have a placeholder, because the last dialogue was on energy. So right now the parties are talking about what's going to be in that placeholder. So things around so-called critical minerals. It might be the first time ever also that minerals are mentioned in a text. And so that's really, really exciting. But what's even more exciting, if possible, is that we also have a paragraph to set out new institutional arrangements under this work program. So an institutional arrangement, which would be a permanent structure under the UNFCCC on just transition. This concept of a just transition mechanism, which has a fun acronym, the Belém Action Mechanism, or the BAM, this is actually something that was built and created and initially prototyped by the constituencies. Trade unions, feminists, environmental NGOs, youth all came together and built this proposal and elaborated it a lot more, socializing amongst the parties. And what we saw yesterday, or maybe the day before, maybe yesterday, is that the G77 have put forward this as their main demand. So G77, who are the developing country bloc, are extremely united that this is their demand. And what we're trying to do at this is just to establish it and establish those key functions. And what this would do is essentially operationalize those principles that are in paragraph 11. Because right now work on just transition globally is fractured and disjointed, and the landscape is confusing, and there's duplicative work and it's not so clear. And this would coordinate the work happening in all these different spaces under the ILO, but also at the national level, make best practices available, match up funders with projects, and just make the barrier to entry for just transition for a global south that little bit lower. And also act as this knowledge bank for all of those things that are mentioned in paragraph 11. So things to do with care, like understanding care as this essential climate infrastructure, gender responsive approaches, so that countries starting their own just transition journeys can go. We also have a help desk function, so they can go to the help desk, and the help desk can say, we have this best practice, we can pair you up with this country who's done a similar thing, or we could do some peer-to-peer learning. There's somebody else trying to do a similar thing. So it's a beautiful thing. It's really exciting. And the room right now is feeling right to deliver something that actually delivers for people and communities. Maybe more than 2 minutes, but follow just finishing right now is a nice place to be.
It. Thank you so much, Sinead. You're amazing. We are with you in solidarity. We're so excited by the work you're doing. The Women and Gender Constituency, colleagues, is open for anybody to participate in. So reach out to Sinead if you want to get more involved in the negotiations, follow them more closely. Visit the Women and Gender Constituency online. This is the official women's major group organizing and under the UNFCCC. We're with you. All our fingers and toes are crossed. This is an exciting moment in the negotiations, and I hope this dialogue and all of these country examples are just fueling you with more energy to get it done in Belém. So speaking of networks, we have another voice on the line who I'm very excited to introduce. We've heard a little bit about this this network that has just launched from Cornelia, but I'm going to invite now my dear Adriana Tomic, Sustainability Manager for the Electrified Powertrain Systems member of the Women Powering Just Transition Network, to come online and share us some information about this brand new network that was just launched in Brussels. If you can tell us a little bit about this regional work and how maybe we can help you grow this growing global movement for a gender just transition. Over to you.
So thank you very much, and happy to be part of this global mission and discussion. Mainly our collective action framework we propose as a network creates a both policy roadmap and at the same time the call for the action. So it should represent the critical bridge which we identified between the global climate and other commitments that we have and national transformation that has to happen urgently. Therefore, our network is essential engine to this change. It must collaborate and connect every sector from different governments to industry stakeholders, stakeholders to civil societies, so complete network of different and diverse communities that has to participate in decision-making process. And also it outlines the core commitments, how we should accelerate the gender responsive just transition across the region and beyond, because we are aiming to elevate women from different climate stakeholders to system architects of the green economy. We identify multiple areas coming from needed of public-private partnerships with industrial symbiosis and new green jobs and skilling for the world of work, which is changing. As most of participants already highlighted, we also identified common focused areas, which are definitely green and digital skills, especially now looking into the digitalization take over our workplaces. Then we identified that is needed responsible climate finance, especially blending the financial mechanisms for women scientists, for entrepreneurs who are leading the climate change. Also, what we identify is the value reduced and redistribute the unpaid care work, which is very essential because there cannot be climate justice without care justice. And our framework stressed out that a just transition requires significant investment in social and physical infrastructure to support the care system. So that will feed up the women's time for education, to be leaders and to be entrepreneurs. We want also to stress out that leadership in decision making is especially important for women, so that they are integrated within every national energy strategies to the local transition communities and councils, especially within STEM participation targets, and directly into the national determined contributions, and also within the national climate policies and low emission strategies, where it's essential to turn the climate plans into the inclusive transformation strategies. Also, what was also emphasized is that we have to measure the benefits, who is left behind within gender disaggregated data. Therefore, together, multiple commitments and proposals from our collective pathway is there to support not only low carbon economies, but also inclusive and just a transition where women are recognized as leaders, as designers and decision makers of the new green economy. That's why we invite all of you, the global partners, to join us in scaling this regional framework to connect all the experience with the global architecture of gender responsible climate action.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I know there's been a link in the chat now to connect if anyone wants to engage and help grow this important network. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. As we're just a couple of minutes over, we're going to move to our closing remarks. But before I do that, I want to pay a special extra thanks to our partners, OECD and ILO. I also want to thank the UNDP teams across all regions who are working together on this topic. Special thanks to Tiffany, Juan, Andrea, Ayak, all of my amazing colleagues behind the scenes here. Thank you so much for doing this event together. So without further ado, I am so happy to turn the floor for some last words, reflections, some insights to take us forward with some closing remarks. My colleague Vesna Bisheva, our UNDP regional team leader, calling in from the Inclusive Growth team. Vesna, thank you so much for being on the line and for working with us in this session. Over to you.
Thank you, Kate, and my sincere thanks to each and every one of the speakers and panelists for their rich, inspiring, and insightful contributions. Today's dialogue brought together a global perspective from Europe and Central Asia to Latin America and the Caribbean, showing us that while our context may differ, our shared goal is clear. We aim for a just transition that puts people at the center and leaves no one behind. I think today we also acknowledge the necessity for systemic policy actions that creates the space needed for women's agency to address structural gender-based inequalities in the economy, but also in the society at large. In a way, I consider this meeting as a call to the delegates at COP30 for advocating the gender lens throughout their deliberations, but also in the commitments in the outcome document. And I will share a few takeaways that stand out from today's exchanges. First, data and evidence are critical. Today, we were presented compelling findings from a new study by UNDP and OECD, and we acknowledge the increased attention and investment to granular, gender disaggregated data, and we encourage to keep this momentum and further collaborate in this area. Without the right data, women's participation in green sectors remains invisible, and so do the barriers that constrain it. Secondly, we've heard that persistent gender gaps are warranting accelerated and intentional or deliberate actions. Several examples showcase that our system are often not fit for pursuing gender-responsive actions in an integrated and holistic manner. And we heard today that a gender-responsive policy mix is a must to translate the political will in the ecosystem-wide action. And we talk about the different subsystems, industrial policies, sectoral policies, informal and formal labor market, social protection, care investments, but also, very importantly, the public and private sector financing decisions. I think the financing angle is really critical. And third takeaway from my side is that out-of-box thinking is needed that will spur transformation. And we already see it sits in several examples, either through integrated gender equality in NDCs, advancing women's leadership in green sectors and climate governance, or strengthening the care economy as part of the green transition. Lastly, I think partnerships, coalitions, and advocacy are an important ingredient and prerequisite for this action. And we heard today a couple of examples. With COP30 right around the corner, this conversation underlines that gender equality is not a side note to climate action, but it is an enabler for its success. And in that respect, I think that we should sustain our effort to triangulate the data, policy, and practice. This collective action is needed. At the end, I would just like to echo Adriana's invitation to all of you to explore and contribute to our shared framework for collective action on gender-responsive just transition, but also to amplify this initiative through your circles and networks. So again, sincere thanks to everyone, and back to you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Vesna. That is a perfect close for this session. I hope you are all encouraged, inspired, some new tools and insights to carry with you into your work. For those of you who may be following the negotiations or calling us and joining us from Belém, we are with you there in spirit, very much with high expectations for gender equality, staying at the heart of every aspect of climate action, and certainly shaping and benefiting from this just transition that is necessary ahead. So big thank you to all of you. Thank you for being on the line. Thank you so much for this collaboration. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.